Hello friends! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Danni, and today we're going to talk through some fantasy standalones. About a year ago on my channel, I did a top 10 fantasy standalones that I've read, and I was thinking about that video the other day about how I haven't read, or I don't think I would change that list very much at this point. It's been a year, so I feel like I should have some contenders that are starting to knock some of my old-time favorites down, and I might have a couple, but I don't have a lot. And so I wanted to give myself a list of books to just kind of keep them front of mind on fantasy standalones that I would like to get to within the next year, so I can keep pressing for some amazing options for those of you who don't quite want a series. I am a series girly. I will always be. I love to dive into big chunky fantasy series where I can get to know the characters for thousands and thousands of pages. I love that. But I also do understand and enjoy jumping into a book, reading it, enjoying it wholeheartedly, and then being able to leave it behind and not feel the pressure to continue with a story or get exhausted with the characters. I totally understand that. And so I do want to keep some standalones at the forefront of my mind so I don't forget about them. So this will be a list of 10 fantasy standalones that I really want to get to. If you have others that you think I should add to this list, please put them in the comments down below. I would love to have a video that I can come back to and reference standalones to put on my TBR, and just for you guys to have a video where you can come and get recommendations if you're kind of exhausted from series and are just looking for one book and to be done. So I'm going to start with an author, actually a couple of authors that I have really loved in the past and am hoping to continue loving in the future. One of those is Adrian Tchaikovsky. And this is a book that was introduced to me by Battle of the Booktubers. I already knew of Adrian Tchaikovsky, but I hadn't heard of this specific title. And it kind of amuses me that I hadn't. It wasn't recommended to me in Battle of the Booktubers, and I know Rainey is still kicking herself for that decision, but it is one that I'm really interested in reading because it is fantasy steampunk, and it's called Guns of the Dawn. The synopsis says, the first casualty of war is truth. First, Denland's revolutionaries assassinated their king, launching a wave of bloodshed after generations of peace. Next, they clashed with their royalist neighbor, pitching war machines against warlocks in a fiercely fought conflict. Genteel Emily Marshwick watched as the hostilities stole her family's young men, but then the call came for yet more soldiers in a ravaged kingdom with none left to give. Emily must join the ranks of conscripted women and march towards the front lines. With barely enough training to hold a musket, Emily braves the savage reality of warfare, but she begins to doubt her country's cause, and those doubts become critical, for her choices will determine her own future and that of two nations locked in battle. I love Tchaikovsky's writing, and I'm interested to see how he frames a woman with no training going into battle, because I know that some of the themes, especially in Children of Time, have talked about gender differences and things like that. And so I'm interested to see, I think this one was published before Children of Time. I can't remember when the first Children of Time was published. This was published in 2015. So we'll see if those themes also peek through in the storyline or if he takes a completely different approach. The next book that I have on my list for you guys is a novella, and that is The River Has Roots. This book has a potential to be kind of an odd one, just with the way that the synopsis is written, so we'll see if this one works for me. I do tend to like weird, odd books. I don't know if it will be so far in that realm, but it features two sisters, which I do love, a sisterhood story, and they are charged with singing their gratefulness to the Fae for the harvest that they get every year. They live in a land that is right on the edge of Fae, and they have always been a little mysterious to the town around them. Well, one of the sisters ends up having a suitor from the land of humans, and she decides not to go with them. Instead, she decides to go to fairy and go after one of her fairy loves. I'm not sure exactly how that works out for her. I know that the story involves how that impacts the sisters' relationship, and potentially, because it is fae, how it would affect the land around them as well, I'm assuming. So I'm interested to see how this works out, especially in a novella. It sounds like there's a lot going on, so I don't know how deep into the world building we get, which definitely can be something that I'm a little nitpicky about. So we'll see how this short story goes. Next, we have another author that I have just dearly loved in the past, and I'm very excited for this release. This is a fantasy horror, but still a fantasy standalone, and that is Snake Eater by T. Kingfisher. This says, in an isolated desert town, a young woman seeking a fresh start is confronted by ancient gods, malevolent forces, and eccentric neighbors. Which, I mean, I just love that little tidbit to begin with. It says, when Selena travels to a remote desert town of Quartz Creek in search of her estranged aunt, Amelia, she is desperate and short of options. Fleeing an unhappy marriage, she has exactly $27 to her name, and her only friend in the world is her dog, Copper. On arrival, Selena learns that Amelia is dead, but the inhabitants of Quartz Creek are only too happy to have a new resident. Out of money and ideas, Selena sees no harm in staying in her aunt's lovely house for a few weeks, tending to her garden and enjoying the strange, desolate beauty of the desert. The people are odd, but friendly, and eager to help Selena settle into her new home. But Quartz Creek's inhabitants share their town with others, old gods and spirits who claim the land long predates their human neighbors. Selena finds herself pursued by disturbing apparition visitors that come in the night and seem to want something from her. Aunt Amelia owed a debt. Now her god has come to collect. I love T. Kingfisher's fantasy horror books. They tend to be slightly on the cozy side, even though they do have scary aspects. So I am excited for this one. Another author that I want to get back to is Leckie, and I think that this is her debut fantasy novel. It's called The Raven Tower. I've also heard that this one has, I don't know if it's the entire book, but it's at least a portion of the book in second person narrative, which I do like because it's odd. I know that it can be off-putting for some people. In the stories that I've seen it in, I do like, I like it just because it's different. This says, gods meddle in the fates of men, men play with the fates of gods, and a pretender must be cast down from the throne in this breathtaking fantasy novel from Leckie. For centuries, the kingdom of Iridan has been protected by the god known as the Raven. He watches over his territory from atop a tower in the powerful port of Vestai. His will is enacted through the Raven's lease, a human ruler chosen by the god himself. His magic is sustained via the blood sacrifice that every lease must offer. And under the Raven's watch, the city flourishes. But the power of the Raven is weakening. A usurper has claimed the throne. The kingdom borders are tested by invaders who long for the prosperity that Vestai boasts, and they have made their own alliances with other gods. It sounds political. Once again, I like the call-in of, or the bringing in of a second-person narrative, and it's by an author that I've enjoyed. So I want to get to this one. I think it's going to be great. Next is another author that I've enjoyed in the past. I swear they're not all from repeat authors. I think this is the last one, but that's The Summer War. This is by Naomi Novik, and Naomi Novik wrote the Tamara series that I have just been absolutely eating up. And so I'm interested to see what she does with this novella. So it is shorter if you guys aren't interested in chunky books. And it is regarding a young girl who has some type of magical abilities, and she ends up cursing her brother. It says she cursed her brother to live a life without love and must find a way to undo her spell. I believe her brother goes off to war, and in abandoning her, she has some feelings about that and ends up using her magic in a bad way, and she has to undo it. I love the cover. As I've said, I've loved the author in the past, and so I'm interested to see if this is a more cozy work or if it's going to be a little bit more serious, depending on, the topics of war and things like that. So we'll see. Next, we have The Incandescent by Emily Tesh, and this one is dark academia. So if you're interested in that, this might be for you. It actually, which I think is funny because I did not plan this, it says in the little synopsis, it says Naomi Novik's Scholomance series meets Plain Bad Heroines, which I haven't read, in this sapphic dark academia fantasy. So I think it's funny that Naomi Novik was referenced in this. This says, Dr. Walden is the director of magic at Chetwood Academy and one of the most powerful magicians in England. Her days consist of meetings teaching A-level invocation to 4 talented, chaotic 6th performers, more meetings, and securing the school's boundaries from demonic incursions. Walden is good at her job. No, Walden is great at her job, but demons are masters of manipulation. It is her responsibility to keep the school with its 600 students and centuries-old legacy safe. And it's possible the entity Walden most needs to keep her school safe from is herself. I've heard great things about this story, and I guess this is another author I've read from in the past, but I've read a novella series. I read Silver in the Wood by Emily at Tesh, and I enjoyed it. So we'll see what she does with a full-length novel. It's not quite chunky length. It's only 416 pages, but I am excited to get to it. Next, we have an author that I've never read from before, I promise, and that's called The God of Endings. This is a vampire historical fantasy. It says Colette Lessange has been hiding a dark secret. She is immortal. In 1834, Colette's grandfather granted her the gift of eternal life, and since then she's endured centuries of turmoil and heartache. Now, almost 150 years later, Colette is a lonely artist running an elite fine art school for children in upstate New York. But her life is suddenly upended by the arrival of a gifted child from a troubled home, the return of a stalking presence from her past, and her own mysteriously growing hunger for blood. This is another one that I've heard really great things about. I think this was on the Goodreads Choice Awards in 2023, I think. Yeah, it was published in 2023, so it would have had to have been that year. But I think that's how it got on my TBR, but I still haven't picked it up, and I would like to. I tend to like a vampire story. I like to know how the author approaches vampirism, especially in this instance where it sounds like in the beginning she was just given eternal life. She didn't realize what the repercussions of that would be. So I would like to see how creative the story gets with the vampirism aspect of who she is. Next, we have a book that I've never heard anyone talk about, and it has the potential to be one of those weird ones that I absolutely love because the synopsis is a little strange and seems a little out there, maybe a little cerebral. It's called The Naming Song by Jedidiah Barry. The synopsis says, "There's nothing more dangerous than an unnamed thing. When the words went away, the world changed. All meaning was lost, and every border fell. Monsters slipped from dreams to haunt the waking, while ghosts wandered the land in futile reveries. Only with the rise of the committees of the named, maps, ghosts, dreams, and names, could the people stand against these terrors of the nameless wilds. They built borders around their world and within their minds, shackled ghosts and hunted monsters, and went to war against the unknown. For one unnamed courier of the Names Committee, the task of delivering new words preserves her place in a world that fears her. But after a series of monstrous attacks on the named, she is forced to flee her committee and seek her long-lost sister. Accompanied by a patchwork ghost, a fretful monster, and a nameless animal who prowls the shadows, her search for the truth of her past opens the doors to a revolutionary future. For the words she carries will reshape the world." I also just love the linguistic aspect of this. I think it could be really fun. So fingers crossed that it is. It doesn't have a ton of ratings on Goodreads. It's only been rated by 623 people. It's got a 3.86 rating though. I've been having a hard time finding it. So the reason I haven't read this one yet is my library doesn't have it. And I do think that it's something that I'm just going to have to purchase. So it might take me a little bit to get to it, but I do have it on my list. Next is one I had on my anticipated releases for this year, and it's called The Entirely True Story of the Fantastical Mesmerist Nora Gray, which, what a title. This is a fantasy, it's a historical fantasy that has some elements of horror in it as well. And this features a woman who has some type of magical ability, but she is brought up in a time when it's not safe for her to make her powers known. Her father's a bit of a charlatan, and she ends up being given an opportunity to travel to America, I believe. But she ends up getting into some trouble there as well. The little synopsis piece that grabbed me, it says, "As spiritualism reaches its fever pitch, at the dawn of the 20th century, a Scottish girl crosses the veil to unlock a powerful connection within an infamous asylum in this thrilling, atmospheric, exquisitely evocative exploration of feminine rage." So I really enjoyed The Women of Wild Hill recently, which was a fantasy horror regarding actually, it was a Scottish witch that came over and ended up haunting an area for a really long time after being burned at the stake. And it was about her descendants and coming together to help rid society of the oligarchy, essentially. So, which I found fantastic. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the characters. And so I do think that looking at a story where you're exploring this woman who has felt like she has to hide throughout her entire life because of these stories, I'm sure that there's something to do with her father as well, because she does call him a charlatan in the description. Maybe some bad blood there, just to see kind of what she goes through, how she empowers herself. I'll be interested to see how this novel takes it. So hopefully it's a win. The last book on this list is by an author that I've wanted to get to in the past, and I just haven't picked anything up by him yet, but that is The Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Djeli Clark. And this one, I've heard from Leandra specifically that she really enjoyed it, but I also just really like the synopsis. It starts with saying, the dead cattail assassins are not cats, nor do they have tails, but they are most assuredly dead. So these are people, these are assassins who are made to, I think they make some type of a vow and they take out contracts for killing people. And it has 3 rules for their contracts. The first is the contract must be just. The second is that even the most powerful assassin may only kill the contracted, so they're not allowed to kill just willy-nilly. And the third and simplest rule is once you accept a job, you must carry it out. And if you stray, a final death would be a mercy. So I don't know anything else except for those rules and the fact that we have some dead assassins that are literally contracted to kill people. But I'm curious to find out what the whole of the story is about. Those are the 10 fantasy standalones that are currently on my TBR. I'm sure that I have others that I haven't mentioned. I tried not to do too many of, like, I had several more fantasy horror that I could put on this list. And so things like that, I tried not to do too much of on this list to give you guys a nice variety. But once again, I would love to have your recommendations or books that you've loved or books that you are anticipating reading in the future that are fantasy standalones in the comments down below. If you aren't feeling chatty, but you still want to leave me an emoji to let me know that you're with me, leave me a cat for Dead Cattail Assassins, so I know that you guys are here. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!